Welcome back to another edition of the BrownsZone.com Zone Coverage Podcast. My name is Andy Barch with AM 930 WEOL and 100.3 FM. As always, I am joined by Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter with the Chronicle, Telegram, the Medina Gazette, and of course, BrownsZone.com. Well, unfortunately, Scott, we're talking about another Cleveland Browns loss. This time, they were certainly in this thing to the end, falling 32-28 to the Seattle Seahawks. Scott, a disappointing loss, but certainly a better showing than the one the Browns gave us about a week ago on Monday night. We'll begin with your three major takeaways from Sunday's loss.
Well, I think we can start with, you can look at this game a bunch of different ways, and I was intrigued by the approach or the reaction immediately after the game. Some people took it as a sign of progress, right? They played so poorly against the Niners. And then they come out, and it's a really good Seattle team, and I think you can make the argument the Browns should have won the game. So there were people encouraged by that, but my initial reaction was they let one get away. They can't afford to let that happen. 2-4 is not where they need to be if they're trying to reach the playoffs, which everyone expects them, or many people expect them to do and believe they have the talent to do. So that was my first takeaway, just kind of the separate reactions people had to the game. Number two, I would say, we saw so much progress with the fast start. 3 touchdowns on the first 3 drives. Impressive. I think that's what you expected this offense to look like. Baker Mayfield got the ball out of his hands. The line protected him because he was only back in the pocket for, a second or two. And I think that's how this offense needs to operate to be at its peak efficiency. They found a way to get Odell Beckham Jr. the ball, which we've talked about plenty of times. Shouldn't be as hard as it has been, but it was, right? For much of the first 5 games, and especially the previous 2 games, it was really difficult to get him the ball. And this looked more natural, getting him the ball, right? He ran some slants, he ran some hooks and some outs. Normal patterns that you figure should be a way to get him the ball routinely. So that was takeaway number 2. And then, we got a million things we can talk about, but just number 3 is how they gave the game away. And that's by takeaways, right? You get 4 turnovers. You're not going to win a whole lot of games. You're throwing a block punt. You're throwing getting stopped at the goal line. And then you throw in, and I want to focus on this a little bit later, is what I thought was a debacle how Freddie Kitchens handled the end of the first half. He got the ball with 5 minutes left, and you get down to the 10, and then you go hurry up for some reason with less than 2 minutes left. Freddie has some weird explanation about he's trying to score twice with less than 2 minutes left, and Baker makes a bad throw into the end zone for the second of his 3 interceptions. So you're not going to win against a good team making that many mistakes, that many huge mistakes. Probably not going to be many teams doing that. It's certainly not Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks. So I would say that those are my 3 kind of big picture things.
We'll come back around to Odell Beckham Jr. in just a moment, but I want to focus on something that you mentioned you certainly wanted to hit on, and that was the way Freddie Kitchens handled things at the end of the first half. Let's open up that box here and dive right in. What were some of the major issues you took with the way Freddie Kitchens went about handling the end of that first half?
Yeah, there's a ton of layers to it, but there's something called a 4-minute offense in the NFL, and that means whether it's the end of the half or the end of the game, the team wants to use all 4 minutes. You want to go down the field, you want to score a touchdown, and the secondary goal is use all the time so your opponent does not get the ball back. It serves a dual purpose. You score, the other team doesn't score, the best of both worlds. Well, the Browns got the ball back with, I think it was 5:02 left in the second quarter, and that's a little long for your 4-minute offense, right? You can only be so deliberate. And, I sit next to Tony Grossi, right? Longtime beat writer, well-respected. Sit right by him in the press box, and he's always been a guy that use all the clock, use all your clock, don't score too early. And I don't go that far. I believe you score when you can score, right? If you score on an 80-yard play, that's fine. The other team gets the ball back. It's not the end of the world. But you still need to score that touchdown, right? That's the number one goal. So I get that, I don't think it's the utmost importance to burn every second. Having said that, the Browns were in a methodical approach. They weren't hurrying to the line, which they had at other points in the game. They were taking their time, and it's fine. They were slowly moving down the field. So they get to the 2-minute warning, all 3 timeouts left. They come out of the 2-minute warning. Nick Chubb runs for 2 yards. So now you got 2nd and 8 at the 10. All of a sudden, the Browns go hurry up. They rush to the line of scrimmage, and whether or not it's because they went hurry up or not, there's some freneticness to the situation, right? Things are sped up. Maybe you're not taking as much time as you'd want if you're Baker Mayfield. He gets a snap, drops back, doesn't set his feet correctly. Now he's got Jarvis Landry open. Jarvis ran a good route. He beats his guy, not by a ton, but he gets inside leverage on the cornerback. If Baker makes a good throw, it's a touchdown. Well, Baker doesn't make a good throw. It's a little bit behind Jarvis. The guy's got tight enough coverage. Ball bounces up in the air, intercepted. So, if you execute there, then we're not having the same discussion. But they don't. And part of that could be the hurried nature of rushing to the line of scrimmage. So then, to make matters worse, the defense can't get a stop. Seattle goes, whatever it was, 88 yards, and scores with 22 seconds left. So instead of the Browns, even if the Browns had settled for a field goal, they're up 11. Instead, they're up 2 because they stopped Seattle's two-point conversion. Huge swing in the game, right? So that's bad enough that how it had played out. To make matters, in my mind, so much worse is Freddie Kitchens, when he's asked about it after the game, says, my mindset was we were going to score, stop them, use all 3 timeouts, get the ball back, and score again. And maybe that's the ideal scenario, but one, what makes you think you're necessarily going to stop Russell Wilson, right? When he gets the ball back, he's playing at an MVP level, the best quarterback numbers in the league so far this year. You would have to stop him immediately because you need to use all your timeouts on first, second, and third down. So you can't give up one first down. And then you assume you're going to go and score again. And all this is within a minute and 36, right? It just doesn't seem logical to me. And then Freddie doubled down on it the next day when we asked him on Monday. He doubled down and said he would do the same thing. And he plays it off as, I want to be aggressive, That's the mindset I have to have. And I just think it was the wrong time to be that aggressive. Now, if they score a touchdown on that Jarvis Landry catch, that's fine. And then you go trust your defense, and if they give up a score, they give up a score. Or if you want to call timeouts and try to get the ball back, that's fine. But I think having the approach of you think you're going to score 2 touchdowns or score twice within the last 136 when Seattle's going to get the ball back, it just doesn't make sense. I just don't think it's logical, and I think it set them up for failure, and it played out as poorly as it possibly could have played out.
You detailed this on BrownsZone.com about the effectiveness of Odell Beckham Jr. really getting heavily involved in the offense in the first half, but then he was held to just 1 catch in the second half. Scott, one of the things that really kind of blew me away about Odell Beckham Jr. was what he said after the game. All we kind of heard about leading up to the season was that, he's kind of going to be a bit of a diva. He can be a bit of a drama queen. Scott, I haven't gotten that from him at all. Yeah, there have been some, I don't know if you want to call them scandals, but there have been some issues that kind of rub people the wrong way. But when I heard him talk after the game on Sunday, that was a guy to me that really appeared to be one of the adults in the room.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you, Andy, for sure. I would say that, and again, it's not like I know Odell well. I've never sat down and talked with him by myself. I've had a couple of off-the-record moments, but even there, nothing super substantial. I've talked to him probably a dozen times as a reporter. But having said that, you get a sense of a guy being around him and being around his teammates and hearing people talk about him. And there's no doubt in my mind that he likes drama, right? He attracts drama. I think he's one of those guys that likes it. Some of us would prefer a drama-free world, and I don't think that's Odell. You don't wear a watch. You don't wear a $180,000 watch if you don't want to attract attention and all those things, right? All the stuff that comes with Odell. But that doesn't mean he's a bad person. It doesn't mean he's a bad teammate. And I think he's been a good teammate since he's been here. And actually, if you talk to people with the Giants, they would tell you the same thing. I think all the bad press or the bad, I don't know, if Odell has a bad image or what, all the bad stuff surrounding Odell, I don't think it comes from him inside the locker room. I think his teammates like him. I think he plays hard. We've certainly seen that in 6 games. He plays hard. He chases, when there's a turnover, he chases down the guy with the ball, the interceptor. So I think he plays hard. He's not afraid to block, all those things. So I think you're right. I would say this, that last week when Jarvis Landry came out and talked about, I'm not the play caller, but we need to get the ball to Odell. Intentionally, deliberately, we need to get the ball to Odell. To me, that was Jarvis Landry doing his best friend a favor. And maybe Odell put him up to it, maybe he didn't. But I think Odell said, okay, it sounds better coming from Jarvis. He's been here longer, right? He's a team leader. If it comes from me, it sounds like I'm whining. So I think Odell got his message across without having to say it. But I would agree with you. I think he's been what the Browns have been looking for off the field. I don't think he's been an issue at all. And I did like after the game how he talked about bringing energy. And I think he realizes on a young Browns team that hasn't proven anything, he needs to step up and be a leader. And he's going to do that by bringing energy. And I think he means that. So, yeah, I think Odell's been great off the field. On the field, hasn't been perfect. A couple of drops that I think you don't expect from Odell Beckham. And maybe that's because he's not getting the ball as much as he's used to. You know, if you catch 9 balls, the one drop isn't a big deal. It doesn't stand out. If you only catch 4 balls, it stands out a little bit more. But I would fully expect coming out of the bye, you would see more games like Odell had against the Seahawks, where the Browns are able to figure out a way to get him the ball more often. And, you know, his numbers, I think he finished with 6 catches against the Seahawks. He could have had more. There were a couple called back by penalties, whether on the Browns or that they accepted an early offside penalty with the Seahawks. It wiped out one. I just feel like he is going to have a bigger impact throughout the second half. Now, maybe not every game. Maybe some games defenses take him away. But if that's not the sole point of focus of the defense, I think you'll see Odell look like the Odell that the Browns expected.
Let's focus on the guy that's trying to get him the ball. I mean, Baker Mayfield certainly has been under the microscope all year long. We kind of expected that. Boy, 3 more interceptions this past week, and I know not everyone was his fault for sure, but, you know, Scott, are we getting to that point in the season where it's becoming a major concern that a lot of those are misfires? Sure, some of them should have been caught, but, I mean, he's leading the league in picks. How much of a concern is that, and how much of that do you think they're really going to try and hone in on during the bye week to try and make sure that certainly gets better?
Certainly, to me, a big concern, Andy, and what's bothersome or most troublesome is one of Baker's calling cards coming out of Oklahoma, and especially during his rookie season, is the accuracy, right? If you're not 6'4" and you don't run you don't have the athleticism of Russell Wilson, you have to do something to be something special to be the number 1 pick in the draft. And it can't all just be intangibles and leadership and, whatever the chip that Baker plays with. So Baker's elite quality was supposed to be accuracy, and it hasn't been there this year. And to me, that's the most disturbing thing is, you got to put the ball where it's supposed to be. And we saw it on that Jarvis Landry, that crucial interception. If it's a step in front, it's a touchdown. And I think he had a step in front to throw it there. He didn't have to throw it behind him. The window wasn't that tight. And he missed. And it's probably because his footwork wasn't right. Right? It all comes back to mechanics and fundamentals. And I just think they're not where they need to be with Baker. And you can make excuses for tip balls turning into interceptions, and that's bad luck. And some of that's true. Some of it is bad bounces. Those fall incomplete. We're not having the same type of discussion about Baker. But I think if you just look at throws and ball placement, it's not where it needs to be. And that's surprising given Baker's history and given Baker's reputation. So I think that's a concern. I think you go back to fundamentals. Now, I'm standing out here after a Browns practice on a Tuesday, and they're practicing. We got to watch the beginning, and he wasn't doing much because that left hip was sore from the game Sunday. Now it's a bye week, so it's not that big a deal. I expect next week him to be okay when they come back to practice. But I would have the focus be a lot of you go back to basics, right? If he comes back and practices Monday, that extra practice before the New England game, it'd be a lot of footwork. It'd be a lot of drill work to work on those mechanics, because I think that's where it starts, and that's something that I think you get away from in the heart of the season. You're so focused on game plans and how we're going to beat them and scheming up. Well, the quarterback's got to have a good fundamentals, a good base, good square to your target, all those things. And it just feels like, to me, they haven't been there with Baker. So, I think that's concerning. I think it's something that can be corrected, because we've seen a history of him being really accurate, but he hasn't been where he needs to be. And that's a big reason this team sits at 2-4 instead of, let's say, 4-2.
How much of it do you think has to do with the hip and with the hand that has come up as well here. Do you think he's healthy at this point, or do you think that could be contributing to some of these things?
I don't think that's a major factor. He hasn't been on the injury report. Not that thing is gospel, but I think he's been fine throughout the season. I think the hip did affect him in the latter stages of the game Sunday, but he still scrambled. He still made throws. In the last interception to Hilliard, that's the only one that came after the hip. And, he would tell you he was trying to stop the guys. He was trying to stop Hilliard from going too far inside to the linebacker, and instead he throws it on his back hip. But I think I don't want to blame the hip on that. You know what I mean?
Understood. It's just one of those things that pops up because the production numbers are so drastically different than they were a season ago. You often wonder if indeed he is fully healthy, and that leads us into our final topic here, the bye week. And I know we'll spend some more time on this next week, but during this bye week, what kind of schedule are we looking at here, and how important is it, do you think, that this falls on a week just before the team they're playing in a couple of weeks, the New England Patriots, play a Monday night game, so they've got a short week to work with?
Yeah, well, we do need to wrap this up because it just opened the locker room, so I'll make it kind of quick. They practice today, which is Tuesday. We're taping this on Tuesday. So they practice Tuesday. They practice Wednesday. At least they're scheduled to practice Wednesday. You never know if that sticks. And then they're off. And through the collective bargaining agreement, they have to be off Thursday through Sunday. And then they'll come back and they'll practice Monday. And then it becomes a routine week. They're off Tuesday, and then they get back into things Wednesday. So they have 2, maybe 3 extra practices. And it's big because that New England game is going to be a huge game for them, right? You need all the preparation time you can get when you're facing Bill Belichick and Tom Brady and those guys, especially on the road. So, part of it is you need to recover. You need to get some downtime. You need to decompress. But the Browns know the sense of urgency that only grew with that loss to Seattle, and they need to come out of this bye week ready, and they need to address the fundamentals, right? They need to cut back on the penalties. They need to cut back on the turnovers, and they need to play better at critical times. And that's what Freddie Kitchens' message is. He talked a lot about becoming a team rather than a group, and he's going to try to solidify that because this team still believes it can make a second-half run. But as Yogi Berra said, it's getting late early, right? They need to start turning this potential and talent into some wins, or else this is going to be a really disappointing season.
Scott, we know you got to run, so we appreciate the time as always. We look forward to doing this again next week.
Sounds good, Andy. We'll get into it deep then. All
right, Scott. Scott Petrak with the Chronicle Telegram, the Medina Gazette, and, of course, BrownsZone.com. That's going to wrap things up on today's edition of the BrownsZone.com Zone Coverage Podcast. For Scott Petrak, this is Andy Barch saying thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you again next week.